Well, good evening and welcome to the Zoom webinar. I'm JW Arnold. I write the Weekend Organist column in the American Organist magazine, and I also work for the AGO as our marketing and communications specialist. And like every one of you, I hope out there, I'm also a weekend organist and serve as the music director at Christ Lutheran Church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and have been doing that for 30 years, juggling a professional career during the week with a professional music career during the weekend. And it's really been a pleasure to uh, work to find solutions because we face a lot of challenges that other musicians may not. So let's begin with the definition. If you've been to one of my webinars before, then this will be familiar, but I always like to start by defining who is a weekend organist. And generally, that's a part-time church musician, maybe working anywhere from 5 to 20 or more hours a week in a part-time capacity for church. Generally, we're paid, although I know that many also are volunteers, but for the most part, we're either hourly employees or perhaps salaried. Many of us are self-taught or professionally trained. We run the gamut in terms of skill and ability and interests. We're working during the week, as I said, but here's the key thing. We have to do much more with less, whether that's practice time. Maybe we're in a church with a small instrument or a limited instrument. Oftentimes, we don't have much budget. We can't always hire professional musicians for those special services, and we also have to work with volunteers. And so it does present a challenge for us as we work to build a meaningful ministry. And I have to really emphasize this. Whether your church has 200 people in the sanctuary or more on a Sunday morning, or you're like me and I have 35, I mean, the work that we do is truly meaningful. It's about helping to elevate the worship experience and facilitate that, whether there are one or two or 30 or 200. And I always like to point out that among the AGO membership, 60% of the members of the AGO are part-time weekend organists, just like us. So we are actually kind of the majority within the organization, and it's important to call out the needs and the expectations that this segment of our membership needs. And I love this quote. This actually popped up in one of the organ groups that I belong to, and it's a quote by Albert Schweitzer. Of course, he's the famous Bach editor and jungle explorer and many things. But he said, if you're called upon to play a church service, it's a greater honor than if you were to play a concert on the finest organ in the world. Thank God each time when you are privileged to sit before the organ console and assist in the worship of the Almighty. And those are pretty powerful words. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have anything to say about the wonderful recitalists out there and professors and all those folks that that perhaps express their music in a different forum than we do. But it is important to note that many of us serve in a very local way, and that's important. And so if you're one of us, I think we rise to a very important calling. And I'm going to ask a favor from each of you. If you haven't done so already, we'd like to know more about your church work, your training, your education, your interests, how we can better create programming that will help you to succeed professionally and personally and musically. So if you haven't already, take a couple of minutes to complete this short anonymous survey. I'm joined today by my colleague on the AGO staff, Dan McCaffrey. He is our membership and information technology coordinator and far, far smarter when it comes to webinars and presentations than I am. But he'll be putting that in the chat periodically this evening. And so if you could take just a moment and share a little information, that'd be much appreciated, and it'll help us to better serve you. So our webinar tonight is Music for Manuals, and this was actually suggested at our fall webinar that we did, the very first one. We put out a call and said, what would you like to hear about? And overwhelmingly, people responded, we'd love music for manuals, music with limited pedal. And it's not necessarily just because we don't have the ability, but it's also a different kind of a repertoire. It has a very different sound on the instrument by nature of the way that it's composed or arranged, and the lack of that pedal voice, or even a high solo voice, depending on how you register your pieces. But tonight we'll be talking about service playing resources that are written for manuals or limited pedal. We'll be looking at some of the things you can find on internet MSlip, the internet public domain site. Lots, just unlimited number of pieces that are there, and we're going to help you to be able to find those too. We're going to look at some Dover editions. Many of you read Roland Smith's contributions to the American Organist magazine, and he's compiled some very, very useful collections for Dover. We're going to look in the British catalog of Kevin Mayhew and also Oxford University Press. We're going to look at some of the works of Charles Callahan. Charlie Callahan, as you may be aware, was a very prolific composer and took music for manuals very seriously. And we lost him, sadly, at Christmas time. We're going to look at Jackman Music in Utah, which is a publisher that serves the LDS Church, and some other interesting works. And of course, we're going to have time for questions and comments at the end, but don't let that stop you from getting into the chat and sharing with each other as we go along. And periodically I'll ask Dan, I can't see the chat in my screen view here, but I'll ask him if anything comes up that any questions or comments that he'd like to bring up. And I'm very appreciative of Dan tonight to have him in the evening outside of office hours to be my wingman on this webinar, so to speak. So let's get started. So we're talking service playing resources, and immediately there are two volumes that come to mind. And one of my columns is about the five books or resources you would want to have with you no matter what, your bag of tricks. And The Art of Hymn Playing by Charles Callahan comes in two volumes and is just a wealth of material. It's not only contains alternative hymn arrangements and harmonizations, but it also includes interludes and some preludes and fanfares on the 250 tunes in each volume. And I'll just give you a sense of this. I pulled this from one of the music publishers' site, and of course this is copyrighted, but it gives you a sense of what he does on a pretty regular basis. And you'll see Nandanket, he's actually set the same setting in the two prevalent keys that you're going to find that hymn in the hymnals. Very often you'll find it either in E flat or F, and there's nothing more frustrating when you find a great arrangement of a hymn, but then realize that the hymnal has it in a different key. And I don't know about you, but I'm not always that good at transposing on site. So this is very helpful to me, and I think to you. With Lions, he's created two settings for this, and one has a very simple pedal part to it, but these are both happen to be solo settings. And so that's a way to change up your hymn playing a little bit. You're not always just playing four voices, but creating a solo version for that. And here are two variations. And then the third one, for this very familiar Advent and Christmas hymn. I think it's really interesting because in one version, he solos the melody in the treble, and then in another setting, he takes it down to the tenor part. And again, it's a fairly simple pedal part, but it just gives you a sense of how you can spice up your hymns, even with limited practice time, even with maybe limited keyboard skill, or maybe organ specific training. It's possible to sound like a real pro with these arrangements. And my only frustration with them is that generally there's one, two, or three, so you can't always cover the entire hymn from his volumes. But that's where this collection from Lynn Trapp comes in. And I'll just point out before I talk about these that at the end of the presentation, I'm going to pull up some videos so that we'll be able to listen to several of these. Many of them have the score play at the same time. But I love this collection, Hymns of Praise, Then Let Us Sing. And basically, they give you the resources. There's an intro, a verse, there might be a transposition interlude, and then a final verse, and it's very minimal pedal. And there's nothing better than just sounding, when you can get up there and sound like Diane Bish on your organ, or Fred Swan, or Virgil Fox. I mean, this is the type of arrangement that can really make you the star during the hymns. And we'll take a look at those later. Some other great worship resources that I found come from Kevin Mayhew. And these were a couple that caught my eye. Of course, over on the right, I think the Noel Rawsthorne 200 Last Verses. I mean, his arrangements for organ with pedals are really standards in the repertoire. But here, what they've done is they've actually arranged those big, grand British settings and worked it all into the manuals. And the other great thing is it also works with the keys a little bit, because I think in my church I found that coming out of COVID, it's really difficult for my congregation to sing some of the hymns in their original keys. Now, if you're on a digital organ and you can hit that transposer button, you've got it fixed right off the bat. Um, but it really is, I think, in this day and age, and as our congregations, especially our women get older, and in our choirs, and their voices don't have the range that they used to, this can be very helpful in making hymn singing a satisfying experience for everyone. The other two I think are really, really interesting from a service point of view. Play On. So there are some improvisations meant to kind of extend a hymn after the last verse has been sung. And there's so many times I play in an evangelical Lutheran church, so we do communion, setting the table after the offering. Sometimes there's some dead time, and so to be able to have that and pull out and be able to continue the music while the pastor and the assisting minister get communion ready can be a great asset. And then the other one that I think is really interesting is restrained last verses. We're sort of taught with that idea of, we have to go out with a bang on hymns. And so I thought this was a really interesting, a very, very interesting approach to arrangements. And as I noted at the bottom of the slide, I mean, arrangers, they're transposing those hymns down into lower keys. So I think especially some of these resources are going to be helpful in making the hymns more useful in smaller congregations and older congregations. So I hope folks are getting into the chat. Is there anything in there, Dan, that any questions or comments that you think we should share?
Nope, there's nothing at this time, but everybody feel free to put in any questions or suggestions that you have.
Great. Yep, let's get the chat going. I can't see it again, so feel free to jump in there and share your ideas, and we can share those suggestions with everyone afterwards. Okay. Now here's a tip. Like many of you, I mean, music is expensive, and I just wanted to call out that one of the most valuable AGO member benefits that I see is a 10% a 10% discount that we all receive from Sheet Music Plus. And I would just remind you of that. It's very easy to take advantage of, and especially for these, maybe if you're downloading a $3 or a $4 or $5 downloadable kind of a single voluntary anthem, that's just 30, 40, 50 cents. But some of these collections though are 20, 30, $40. So that becomes a significant discount. So don't be afraid to take advantage of that. If you want to, all you have to really do is log into the AGO website through OnCard, And then you'll be able to go to the member benefits page, and that has all the information on the various discounts and special offers that are available to AGO members. So I hope that you will take advantage of that, and you let us know what if you try any of these suggestions out. I hope you'll let me know what you think, because I think after 30 years, I have a good sense of what works for me, but I'd love to hear what works for you. So let's go on. Okay, let's talk about MSlip. It's basically the internet music resource site for music, sheet music, and most of it is older. It's all copyright free, public domain editions. Many times first or second editions, and what a treasure trove of music can be found, especially if you really like early music, going into sort of the early French Romantic. There's so much Baroque and classical and Romantic music available. And just a couple of things that caught my eye. Um, this collection of Handel small fugues work really well on a organ. The instrument that I have has a short keyboard range, and so these all work perfect for that. Of course, César Franck, l'organiste, pieces written for harmonium, which was a kind of a little miniature instrument, and then Vierne. These are also many familiar pieces, and again, basically can be done on the keyboard, and every now and then you can throw in a couple of pedal notes and fill those out. Many of them have also been arranged for manuals and pedal as well, but they're all there. And I think that the biggest challenge for me is it's just finding it. And so often you have to kind of have an idea. Well, am I looking for someone that Baroque? Am I looking for Bach? Am I looking for Bellman? Are we looking for Franck Guimont, Handel, whoever it may be? It's sometimes it's a little bit of a journey, an adventure. You can get sucked down that rabbit hole looking to see what is there, and then selecting the pieces. But I want to tell you about another one of the resources that's available to you as an AGO member. Um, as a member, you're eligible for a discounted annual membership to the Church Music Institute. And one of the best benefits of this is they just have tens of thousands of organ and choral works that have been cataloged and available in their online archive. And if you look at this, it also includes IMSLP. And if you look at the bottom of the search screen there, if you're looking for organ music, you can also look by manuals only. And so that would include all the organ works that are in the collection, but also MSlip as well. And so it's a great way to in addition to the other resources, to really comb through the catalogs and find works that can be beneficial to you in your music ministry. Now let's talk about Dover. So Rollin Smith, any of these three collections, I've had the Treasury of Organ Music for manuals only for probably about 35 years, I think, at least. Great collections, very heavy on the classical, small C classical composers, Bach, Mozart, Franck, Saint-Saëns, Mendelssohn. You'll find them all in any of these. And I don't know if they've changed them since I got it. My only gripe with Dover is that they produce the books as perfect bound, and so you have to kind of break the spine to keep them open. So if you do select one of these books or have it, it's not a bad idea to take it. Um, Sometimes you can take it to a place like Kinko's, or FedEx office. I'm dating myself, FedEx office. They can actually drill holes in the book so that you can put it in a spiral bound binder. But really, really great collections, and they're all the standards of the repertoire, the kind of the standard transcriptions and original organ works. And here's another little pro tip here. These editions are all available from Amazon. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can get free shipping as well with those. now we're going to take a look at a couple of things that jumped out at me from the other side of the pond, so to speak. And the first, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it, and we're going to listen to it later. So you can't leave early. You cannot leave early because Colin Hand has arranged Vitor's Toccata. And even though most of us would probably say, hey, that's not quite the whole thing, your congregation probably isn't. And what a way to wow them as a postlude for Easter Sunday or Pentecost or one of the big festivals with the Vitor Toccata. It really is an interesting way to to celebrate and also make it the piece accessible to everyone. I know as I get older, I'm finding those multiple octave pedal jumps to be kind of a challenge with my hips. So fortunately, Mr. Hand has taken care of that for us. A couple of Oxford pieces that I think you might enjoy. Old English organ music for manuals. Of course, there's just a plethora of music that was written in the 18th and early 19th century for organs that didn't have pedals. And this set edited by C.H. Trevor has, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 various collections, volumes. And so lots of great Old English voluntaries that sound great on a small organ, because again, many of them were written for those small little English parish churches. And so they're worth checking out. And then also Oxford Service Music for Organ, edited by Anne Marsden Thomas, of course, one of the leading British organists. And this collection leans definitely much more contemporary and a little different. And as many of you know, ordering music from the UK can be an expensive proposition. But I discovered that again, many of the Oxford University Press volumes are available on Amazon. So again, uh, you have the benefit of the Amazon distribution network, but also potentially free shipping. And that tends to be a big factor when you're placing an order for music. It's just the cost of shipping. So we'll come back to listen to that Vitor at the end of the discussion. But I can't wait to hear your responses. You're going to love me or hate me. Now let's talk about Charles Callahan. We were so sad to learn of his passing at Christmas, and just a beloved figure in our community. But I think so much more important because he was so prolific in his composite in his composing and arranging. And the biggest piece of that is the fact that he recognized a need for a whole repertoire for organ manuals alone. I mean, it was just something that he took very, very seriously. And these are just five titles. I mean, he's been published by Morningstar, by Concordia, Lorenz. Everyone has shared his amazing arrangements. But if these are five collections here, he's probably got another 100. And there's great Victorian hymns, there's wedding music, there's funeral music, there's uh, collections based on Catholic chant. I mean, just you name it, patriotic. I mean, there's a whole patriotic collection that somehow manages to be used in my church on a July 4th Sunday, even though it's not really a part of our congregation's tradition. And so you're really worth doing a Google search. I mean, that's the only way to do it. I mean, if I tried to list everything, it'd be such small type and whole lists. And I would just say the other thing about his compositions is they may be for manuals, but they don't sound like they're composed for beginners. And I think that's a really important factor as well. They don't sound like beginners organ music. I mean, they're not technically challenging, but harmonically and sometimes rhythmically, he just really creates very rich interpretations of tunes that everyone knows. And so I think you'll be pleased if there's anybody out there that hasn't played any of Charles Callahan's music. I would be surprised, but I'd also be delighted. I think you'll be delighted when you get a chance to sit down with it. Now, let's talk a little bit about Jackman music. Jackman music is based in Utah, and primarily I think serves the LDS, the Mormon musicians out uh, well across around the world, really. I mean, we tend to think in the U.S. of Utah and Idaho, but there are Mormon stakes all around the world, and it's a uh, repertoire, I believe, that is fairly similar in many ways. There are a lot of familiar hymns, but there are also many hymns that were composed specifically based on the readings in the text in the Book of Mormon. But all of these are really interesting, and because in the LDS churches, so many of the organists are volunteers or maybe pianists who have become organists. That Brent Jorgensen and Jackman Music recognized the importance of creating repertoire for them again, so that they can provide a meaningful worship experience without it sounding like something that is you know been distilled down for a beginner. And there are a couple of editions of the Temple Organist with many settings that will be familiar. And we're going to listen to some later. 50 hymn preludes for the bass coupler organist. We've all done that, right? Maybe at some point hit that 16 foot in the grate, or you know, played some tricks with our registration to add some more bass and some depth to our manuals. And then I also found this arrangement, Christmas Preludes for the New Organist, and there's some really interesting arrangements. Again, worth checking out. And if we have anyone on the call today that plays in an LDS church or has some familiarity with that, we'd love to hear from you. I know that's a segment of our weekend organist that we'd really love to reach out to and learn from, and see how we can better collaborate and perhaps create resources for them as well through the AGO. So please let us know, and we'd love to hear from you. And here are some other interesting works that I ran across. Feet Don't Fail Me Now. GIA came out with this several volumes. This volume pictured is for Lent and Easter. There's also one for, I think, Advent and Christmas and Pentecost and all the church season. Um, again, it's a very very manuals focused piece, and I believe we're going to have a selection from there later on. And here's a one from Dorothy Wells, who's was a long time arranger for Lorenz, pedalless wedding music for organ. And this has all of the standards that we all rely on in a traditional wedding, in that traditional church wedding. But one of the things I really love about, she created a pedalless uh, arrangement of Gordon Young's Prelude in a classical style. And that's one I really love as a postlude sometimes, or maybe a recessional in a wedding. And so that's there. The wedding marches are there. The trumpet tunes, air on the G string, all of the very traditional pieces, and they've been well arranged to take out that pedal difficulty or the pedal part. And then finally, uh, Robert Lind at Paraclete has created organ works for the church year for manuals only. And what I loved about these, and we're going to hear a selection from this collection in just a few minutes, is they're very classically inspired in terms of sort of form and composition. And so when we listen to it, I think you're going to find that hey, these are contemporary hymns with a little bit of contemporary harmonies, but they really pay homage to the works of many of the Baroque and English composers. And so if that's the flavor of music that you feel comfortable with, or that your congregation likes, or you want to expand your repertoire a little bit, that gives you that opportunity to do so with tunes that are more likely to be sung today. I think that's always the challenge of so many of the Bach chorale settings, is that we just don't sing many of those hymns very often in contemporary worship. And I use contemporary with a small c, but we'll be talking about that in a minute too. And speaking of contemporary organ arrangements, as was mentioned in the ad in the American Organist and in the promotions, just by being here and participating and even registering, because we know some people may have registered and won't be able to join us for the webinar, you will be receiving a link for John Dixon's trio on Shenandoah. And for those of you who don't know, John Dixon is the AGO's treasurer, but he's also a very, very talented composer and has just added so many works for organists who maybe are in that sort of medium advanced kind of level, or beginning to medium level. And so here's a trio based on a very familiar tune, Shenandoah, that we're going to make available to you. So let's stop the share now. We'll come back to the slides in just a moment, but let's listen to a few of these things and see what you think.
JW, I also have some comments here if you want to
Please,
hear some.
please share.
So we have one from Mark Atencio who's talking about Jackman music, and he says, Jackman music is fantastic for me. I own every organ book they offer. He's saying most music is offered in PDF format and hard copy. So if you have any links or resources, Mark, please feel free to drop that in the chat, and we'll share that with everybody. We have another one from Rachel saying, I'm a Latter-day Saint and I use Jackman and Jorgensen all the time. Also, Neil Harmon hymn settings are some of my favorite, and she has provided a link to some music, which is great to see. And one more we have from Vicky Anderson, saying, I've recently discovered the Church Music Institute. I found a perfect piece for a Lenten recital by Charles Callahan based on a shape note tune with a clarinet. Oh, that's great. So if you would love to share anything more about that, Vicky, please feel free to drop that in the chat as well.
That's great. At the end of the day, we are a community, and to be able to share ideas and share resources, it just brings much more power to all of our individual experiences. And so I hope that you'll continue to share your thoughts. I'm definitely really excited. I looked at several of the Jackman arrangements. I thought, hey, that's something that would sound really great on my organ. And so please do continue to add your comments to the chat, and let's listen to a few things. I'm so hoping that all the AV works out. We tested it. So we're going to go over and we're going to our friends at YouTube for some things. So hopefully we've sidestepped the commercial ads and all that. So the first selection I'm going to play for you is from Charles Callahan's Art of Hymn Playing. And this is an arrangement I use a lot. It's a setting of Slain, Be Thou My Vision. And so let's give that a listen.
I'm not getting any sound, JW. If you want to
Okay.
try and start the share, make sure.
Yep. Yeah, the best laid plans of organists. Let's try this again. Aha. Thank you, Dan, for pointing that out. I think it's going to work this time. How's that?
That's great.
and you hear there's no pedal there, but it's just arranged well and sounds, it's very lovely, it's sophisticated, and clearly would work on a very small instrument too, if that's what you play in your church. They sound great on digital instruments too. Let's take a look. Okay, here's my favorite. These are the hymns of praise and let us sing. I guarantee you're going to sound like uh, one of the great organists leading a hymn with this. I hope I've got it set up to the right place, and you could follow along. The pedal part is fairly simple, but boy, this thing just it's big and it's impressive, and I know in my church it's small, but they like to feel like they're part of something grand, and this allows me to share that experience with them. So let's see what happens. I don't know about you, but that gives me goosebumps. I mean, I just, beautiful arrangement. As you can see, not super challenging from a technical standpoint, but just chances to play with your registrations and to hopefully uplift the singing of the hymns in your congregation. So that one gets a big two thumbs up from me. So I hope that you'll check that out as well. Just a really, really great piece. And again, that was Hymns of Praise, Then Let Us Sing. Now let's take a look at one of those organist pieces that we found on IMSLP. M-slip, however you want to refer to it. I know there's a big long contraction and it's slipping my mind right now, but that's okay. So let's hear a little Franck for a moment. Originally intended for a harmonium, but it works really great on an organ. And there we go.
If your knees touch when you sleep on the side.
Nope. Can't have knees touching except if you're using the Gleason method for organ playing. Some of you will get that. Yeah, again, very, very classical French style there, early romantic or mid romantic. But again, very playable, and I think probably there are folks out there where that would sound so beautiful in the setting of your church. Here's another one that we found as well from IMSLP. And this one's kind of fun because this has been recorded on a Hauptwerk setup, and we're going to talk about Hauptwerk just a little bit later. But I thought it was appropriate, being as we're in the Eastertide season now, Ophelia et Filiae, and this is French classical, I believe. Whoop. And I'll spare everyone all 9 verses of that. But yeah, again, I guess this is technically a French Baroque period piece. But again, I find it fun to watch the keys kind of light up as they're being played on that. It gives me a sense of what the difficulty is on that. But again, completely free public domain work, and it's available, and it's a great opportunity to practice all those trills and ornamentation and all of that can be so confounding sometimes. At least it is for me. Okay, so now we're going to move on to that piece that I promised you. And we can do thumbs up, we can do whatever, but Callahan has taken upon himself to make Vidor's toccata playable by many of us. So let's see what you think. Let's see what you think. And then it repeats that section over. I mean, it's clearly not the original. And even other composers have sort of taken it upon themselves. Gordon Young has a really nice, very, very simple toccata that's homage to Vidor, that plays with that sort of that rhythmic figure that plays through the whole thing. But let us know what you think. I mean, I think it's kind of interesting. I would happen to bet that probably if you pulled this out 2 Sundays ago, people would say, "Wow, they're playing the Vidor toccata," and so I don't know. But anyway, just it's always fun when you stumble upon these things and get them. So let's Dan, have we had any comments that we'd like to share before we move on to the next one?
Yes, we have a few. Some Jackman music. Let's see. Another suggestion from Bob Davies. Benjamin Colley has some nice arrangements for manuals only. Also, check out his wonderful arrangements for organ duet, 4 hands and 2 feet. If you want to have a more experienced style, one part is manuals only, and the other part includes pedals. And I think we have some, as you expected, some divided opinions over the arrangement of the toccata. But yeah, that's about
Great.
it.
I figured so. I figured so. I love that idea of the organ duet. So that may be a chance for someone who's a little less comfortable with the pedals to again play a big piece with a colleague who maybe is a little more experienced or a little more comfortable with that. So we'll definitely have to check those out. So let's take a look at just a couple of things from Charles Callahan. This is a Dorian prelude from his Saint Cecilia organ book, and and a very nice piece as well. Yeah, I mean, very, very nice, very, very, melodic and flowing, and just a beautiful piece. Great for communion, I think, or an offertory. Let's listen to a little bit different one. So this is for the beauty of the earth. I think this one has a score for us, maybe to follow as well, or not.
Yeah, we're not getting sound on this one.
Yep. Okay, let's try that again. We were doing so well too. We were batting 1,000 there for a minute. Okay, so this one's not cooperating. Well, again, a very nice one. I mean, from the last one from Charles Callahan, you never would have thought that there was anything missing. I mean, it just didn't sound like there were no pedals. I mean, he just weaved the bass part into the hands. Let's listen to one of the Brent Jorgensen pieces from the Temple Organist. Oh, come on. Here we go. And so, as you heard, those are really beautiful settings of some hymns, and he's included modulation and some variations. So, again, someone who maybe has limited training or a shorter amount to practice. I mean, you really can create a very worshipful experience through music with these beautiful arrangements. And here's another one that I found. This is from 50 Hymn Preludes. Oh, that tune sounded familiar, didn't it? A little bit of Hyfordal there, Hyfordal. Um, they're nice arrangements again. And then our final musical selection. This is one of those Robert Lind arrangements that I mentioned that have really kind of have a nod to the English and the German Baroque style. So let's see what you think of this.
First, the voluntary.
And there we go. So that collection has a lot of that style. I mean, just very nice and clean. And so I'm going to switch back. We're running out of time, and I want to thank Dan for being here tonight. But most importantly, I want to thank you for being here. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. And I want to hear from you. And we have some really kind of exciting things planned coming up. And it's our next June webinar, and we're still getting the date hammered out, but I wanted to share this with you because it's contemporary praise music for traditional organists. And like many of you, I got an email from J.W. Pepper, one of the big retailers of music, and it was promoting choral arrangements of some very popular praise songs that you hear. And so I reached out to the company and spoke with one of their consultants. They have consultants that specialize in choral, in organ, piano, band, orchestra. And one of their consultants and I had a great conversation about, what exactly is contemporary music? How do you respond if someone in your congregation or your parish says, I wish we could do something a little more contemporary? Uh, for me, that brings back a lot of memories of the 80s and the 90s of blended worship, but I'm not sure that contemporaries quite takes on that connotation. So be watching in your email for more information on this, because I think it's going to be really fun. I don't think we have to install drum sets or whip out the bass guitars yet, but I think it's a way to maybe add a little different style to our worship, or a dimension to our worship in the future. So watch for that. I also want to tell you that we have the next 3 Mondays webinars coming up. And so if any of you are interested in technology, on Monday, April 15th, we're going to talk about Capella software, which is a notation software. We have a very generous discount from Capella for AGO members who are interested. So what you can do is tune into this and learn about it and decide if it's something that you might want to download the free trial and give it a whirl. On Monday, April 22nd, one license is back. And it's something we all deal with, whether we're streaming our services online or really doing any kind of recording and just in general, just performing music today. We have to be very conscious of copyright law and how copyright and public domain interact and what's expected of us as professional musicians in our churches. And then finally, on Monday, April 29th, we're going to do some helped work. And we have folks from helped work coming in to show us how AGO members have constructed their own virtual pipe organs, similar to that software we saw earlier in the presentation. And so if you've ever had some curiosity about it or thought, I wonder what that's all about, please plan to tune in. All of these are free. You can sign up for these on the AGO website. And it's a great chance to learn and hopefully take advantage of some of those member benefits that we all have. And then finally, if you're headed to San Francisco, and I'm going to tell you that over 800 AGO members have signed up for the National Convention in San Francisco this summer. We're going to do a weekend organist reading session and have some networking opportunities. So I hope if you're planning to come, you'll set some time aside during that session. I believe it's on Wednesday. And come join us, introduce yourselves. It's not going to be a presentation. It's going to be a very interactive experience. So we look forward to seeing you in San Francisco. And I'll just tell you that the hotel rate is phenomenal. It's you can't get a room for that price. And so build it into a vacation. There are still some affordable flights out there. So do a little bit of research at sfago24.org and consider joining us, because I think it'll be really great. And then also don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to ask Dan if he'll drop that survey link in the chat one more time too. I mean, please take a moment to tell us more about you and what you'd like to see in terms of programming, but also share your thoughts. I'm getting ready to publish a column in TAO with all the great suggestions that have come from weekend organists across AGO in terms of the choral anthems that they really love and wedding resources. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of great suggestions for music for manuals. So we're going to put those together in a great single place for everyone to check out. And we hope that you will share that as well. So with that, anything else in the chat, Dan, before we go?
No, just a compliment from Bob Davies saying, great webinar. I really like your AGO column too. So
Well,
done,
thank you, Bob.
JW.
Thank you. We're always looking for great topics. I had one land in my lap today for July, so it's going to be a fun one. So wishing everyone a wonderful Eastertide. I know we all worked so hard the last couple of weeks, and it's we've earned a little bit of a break, and so I appreciate you taking a night out of that to spend it with me. And let's keep the conversation going. We are a community. We're an integral part of AGO, and let's see what we can do together. So with that, I will go ahead and sign off, and thank you again.